Hello and welcome to the Transcend Professional Development Core Didactic Training Series. This is the second one. I'll give a brief introduction to our speaker and then let her get started. Dr. Soojung Kim is Interim Dean of the School of Graduate Studies at the University of North Dakota. With a background in both communication and public health, she's drawn to interdisciplinary research that bridges these fields. Her work focuses on health and science communication, especially around public health interventions and translational research. She has served as a principal or co-investigator on a range of federally and foundation-funded projects, including clinical trials aimed at improving radon testing rates and building vaccine confidence. Recently, she's been working on randomized controlled trials comparing a smartphone-based radon app to traditional print outreach methods. As a social scientist, Dr. Kim collaborates closely with public health departments, clinicians, and medical researchers to tackle urgent health challenges across North Dakota.
Thank you, Dr. Williamson, for the introduction, and thank you, everyone. Can you all see my screen? I'm sharing PDF slides. Okay, let me make it as a slideshow. Okay. Thank you for having me today as part of this seminar series. Busy time of the year, so I appreciate everyone coming and sparing your lunchtime with me. I come from a social science background, so hoping that what I will share my experiences in clinical and translational research can be of use to a lot of the colleagues over in the med school, and I'm sure outside of UND as well. So, here's a little agenda that I put together. And then I'll start with a little bit of my introduction where I think that will set the stage better. And then I'll briefly share about research agenda and along with my professional goals and how those bigger picture help me set the goals in external research and how that translated into my clinical and translational research. And then I'll summarize my content with different lessons that I learned throughout my experiences. And I'll be happy to take any questions at the end. Okay, with that, so a little bit of myself that I am originally from Korea. I went to Korea University as a college student, got a bachelor's degree in psychology and communication. I went on to Minnesota for my master's and PhD in communication. So I have had a lengthy educational background until that point. I started my tenure track position as an assistant professor in the comm department here at UND in 2015. So I'm finishing up my 10th year at the university. I recently took extremely recently, just last week, took a different position with the School of Graduate Studies, but I've been involved and affiliated with the communication department for the past 10 years. And in my first or second year as an assistant professor at UND, I started taking some public health courses here in the MPH program. Never really intended to finish the degree, but I wanted to learn a little bit of more public health side of the knowledge because I was interested in evolving more into health communication researcher. I ended up enjoying it so much, fell in love. I decided to finish the degree. So I got the degree from MPH, proud alum of UND Med School in 2021. That experience and collaboration with the public health faculty has been life-changing for me. So that's a little bit about myself. And another context that would be helpful and relevant to my experience with CNT research is that, like everyone else, we try to navigate many different roles in our professional and personal lives. For if you have a faculty appointment, we often deal with research, teaching, perhaps some clinical obligations for some of you, service, administration. We wear different hats. And then maybe in parallel with those roles, we often also have professional goals that we want to achieve throughout those different roles. And I realized early on in my career that it's a lot. It's a lot to navigate. How do I do it well in many of these areas in a more streamlined process? So how I approach external grants and CNT research that I've been involved with CNT research is really the reflection of me. How do I navigate those different roles and how do I want to get closer to my professional goals? So I'll share some of those along the way. Very briefly, this is my research agenda, and I think it covers some of the things that I just mentioned. Obviously, I am a social scientist. I'm a communication researcher by nature, and specifically, I started as an advertising researcher. That was my PhD and master's program was for, and I was heavily researched and published in advertising research, mostly in digital and social media spaces. But as we know, even if you don't have any communication educational background, advertising is about persuasion and promotion and strategic communication. So I come from that background. And then my way of streamlining all of my different goals and my aspirations and different roles in my different roles at UND was always about how do I contribute to the lives of North Dakotans. And I have interacted just a few times with Dean Jenkins as she arrived on the campus. And I've been always inspired by how she's passionate about the state and then the improving the qualities of life. And that's always been my goal too, and a part of research agenda. When I was first introduced in radon exposure and radon issues that's facing North Dakotans, that's perfectly aligned with what I wanted to do. And there was a role that I can play as a communication professor and researcher there, and a couple other topics that I have been passionate about. Um, with those two backgrounds, what I really wanted to do as a researcher and even as an administrator too, that I wanted to make a tangible impact in regional, local, and state communities. That aligns really well with my professional goals that I always been sharing whenever I talk to other colleagues across the campus or students, is that I want to save lives and save resources. Those are two of my big professional goals. However, I do. There is another third goal, which is strengthening democracy. That's not directly related to my research areas, but I have been able to do so through my administrator roles in the past. But I am always interested in aligning the roles and goals, and that's where my CNT research comes in as a result of that effort. I know first presenter shared some definitions about clinical research from NIH, so I wanted to just put it out together as a reminder, and I have a next slide with the translational research as well. But one thing that I want to mention with this big language here is that when I was first introduced to the NIH version of the clinical research as a communication researcher, I realized that it's not just about like the clinics that we think about. I often had a stereotypical ideas about what clinical research entails, and I always had this idea that it's only for medical doctors or like medical researchers. There's no place for social scientists go in there. But that was very, very wrong. It was a lot about any human subject related, those who are at risk of the disease. And that was what I was doing without knowing the NIH version of the clinical research. That gave me confidence about, I can be a part of the collaborative team from my social scientific background. And this definition, I realize that it's not available on the website anymore, but I got it several months ago from National Center for Advancing in Translational Sciences, which captures the definition of the clinical research that NIH provides, also defining what the translational research means from their perspectives. And it's really a lot about observations into intervention with the overall goal of improving the health of individuals and communities, including behavior changes. And that also gave me a lot of confidence that there is a place for me as a social scientific background, because what we always do as a social scientist, we come up with the interventions. We wanted to change individuals' behaviors. We want to understand how they became aware of an issue, how they accumulate knowledge, how that translate into behavior changes so that we can make a positive health impact. So these two definitions are what I realize are extremely inclusive and that it serves a really good parameter and ideas and insight into how we can all work together as a multidisciplinary groups. I was introduced this analogy when I was in first or second year assistant professor here at UND, and that stuck with me for a long time. And I often refer back to this analogy, oftentimes until these days. I was not really familiar with the external grants process or CNT research overall early in my career because I was not really being exposed to clinical research or translational research, those terms. And then Dr. Schwartz, my longtime mentor, he hasn't been able to get rid of me yet, that used this analogy to help me understand what I can do. And then he said that, it's about getting a car and getting a gas money. You cannot ask for the funding agencies to buy me a car. But then once you have at least a clunky used car, you can ask for gas money. Those are the federal or foundation, whatever external agencies that we go for. And that gave me an aha moment. And that's where I always kind of refer back to when I try to do any research, whether it falls into this perspective of am I asking a car or am I asking for a gas money? Do I need extra car to get to this point? So I'll keep using this analogy to share my experience. I think that would be easier for us to be on the same page. So before I had any success with the external grants, and I'll get to my experience with the CNT, but this sets a context. That I was primarily publishing articles on these different topics, and obviously mostly advertising, social media, how to make your messages more effective, and cross the clutter in the digital social media spaces. From relying on that analogy, I had different pieces of used cars, but then it was not really in a car format. So it was not functioning. I had a little bit of everything, but then not really organized in a way that I am going toward to a specific direction or specific objectives, I guess. Apparently, not surprisingly, there has not been a success in any internal or external grants at that point. And then I was introduced to this radon research with five different those scoring, what do you say, the factors that NIH reviews on. And then I realized also that's an aha moment for me that finding a fundable cause is the start of the CNT research, whether you have resources or not. And I was so excited to hear about how critical radon exposure is for the lives of North Dakotans because that does touches on my aspirations to serve the state that I work for. And then this preventive approach to the radon exposure does help getting close to my professional goals of saving lives and saving resources. So it really fitted all of the goals and roles that I had played. And then sadly, we had the perfect environment to do this radon research because having the highest level of indoor radon exposure in the state as being the only medical school in the state, there is no better group or organization to tackle on this research. So I was very convinced that this is the fundable cause that I really wanted to commit my expertise and experience to get this going. So going back to this analogy that my experience is really highlighted in this path, and to full disclosure, there is arriving mark or destination mark, but I don't really have a destination mark in my brain. It's just for the visual purpose. It's an ongoing journey. I'll continue to fund my or fuel my car, but it's kind of metaphorical in that way. So when I first introduced the issues about radon exposure, I realized that those investigators' innovation approach are just something that we have control over. And then it's up to us how to make our case stronger and be successful and continue to work on the CNT research. So I was invited to become part of this amazing multidisciplinary collaboration groups with a lot of the expertise on the team that they've been welcoming, always collaborating, and always empowered me in a sense that, I have a very significant portion that I can contribute as a social scientist. And that's been a strong team for many, many years in the past. We've worked together successfully. My CNT research experience began in 2018 with UND's Early Career Award. For these days, there has been a lot of changes in Early Career Award at UND. So now it's a much bigger than I got when in 2018, and then it has a little different approach. But at that time, it didn't require necessarily about collaborative teams. The amount is smaller than the current dollars that we give to the Early Career Awards recipients, but it was good enough for me to get a used car with 100,000 miles on it. It allowed me to develop a app that we're currently working on, but a beta version of the app, and very clunky. Design is terrible, but it had served the function, which is to get us started on this journey. So we were able to use the Early Career Award to do a very pilot clinical trial. So that was the first step. And we know we use app all the time for everything that we do these days. But even in 2018, app was such an innovative tool. And then we want to obviously respond to the changes in digital and social media environment as we continue to work on the CNT research. But I believe it's still innovative approach with the sound scientific rigor in it. But anyways, that's where we got started with a clunky used car. This is a screenshot of that app that we first used from the Early Career Award. As you can see, web-based, you can't even find it in the App Store or Google Play. Very clunky, but it had a minor functions, something that we wanted to test, which were whether people observe information from this app to educate themselves about radon, and then whether they are willing to order a test kit through the app, which is the first step of the behavior chain that we wanted to address, which is getting the radon test kit, actually test your house. If the level is high enough, mitigate the house. Those are the steps, the chains of behaviors that we wanted to tackle. So this is the very first step. And then we were able to publish this pilot intervention study in BMC Public Health that has been a very successful, not in a sense about how many times it got cited. It's cited not a lot of times, but it was good enough for us to go after gas money moving forward. And then I had this opportunity to get the pilot grant from the previous CTR grant Dakota in 2021. And that helped me to further this journey because there were obviously apparent limitations in this pilot trial that we did and published in 2020, that it didn't have a control group. And then it used the college student sample, and there were a lot of limitations. But granted, these little grants helped me along the way to address those limitations and refine ourselves further and further. So with the Dakota grant, that I was able to extend the pilot trial into a randomized trial with the usual control group with the printed approach versus the app approach. Small addition, but then it obviously made us to, or helped us to use the randomized trial, which is the golden standard, to test the intervention ideas. And again, we were able to publish this in Cancer Medicine, which was also been very, very helpful for us to build our case, our initiatives in the external agencies about what we can do and how our innovative ideas are actually a promising tool to further do the interventions for this radon issue. Um, and then next year, we also got another grant from Prevent Cancer Foundation. Again, very small step. We were actually able to replicate the Dakota trial with a different sample, which were the parents of daycare children. So in Grand Forks. And they were mostly homeowners, which is the ideal population that we wanted to reach. And it was such a great opportunity for us to scale up our randomized trials, having that external validity set in with this foundation grant. So that's another good success throughout this journey. And then we were also able to publish pretty quickly with the turnaround, and then has been a successful evidence for us to argue for our case. We recently got our biggest grant from Housing and Urban Development last year. Also, we are in year one. We're actually getting a little better car with this support that it's an ongoing trial, so I won't share much details about it.
Hmm.
But all the evidence that we collected and all the CNT research that we did with the limited resources, it's not perfect, but those limited approaches helped us get to this point where we now have a more refined version of the app, and then we are trying to tackle different behavior in that behavior chain, which is about increasing testing rates. So it's not just about ordering the test kit. Spoiler alerts, many people order the test kit, but they don't use it. And unused test kits are waste of resources. So we're trying to figure out how we can change that behavior in this different path, but on the same journey, but a different approach and different types of behaviors that we wanted to address. So it's an ongoing, with a lot of uncertainties with the external grants. We were worried a little bit, for now, we're still going. And then the clinical trial that we proposed, the first one, is almost coming to an end. We're excited to share more once it's done. Throughout that process, there were smaller grants, smaller supports that we were extremely excited about. And they were not really research grants, and they are not even CNT research, obviously, but it helped our fundable costs and move along the way to the next level. So the first one that we got, it was only $5,000 from National Center for Healthy Housing a few years ago. And then we initially proposed a little bigger than 5,000, but the amount that we got approved for was only $5,000. The purpose was to build a digital radon detector lending library with the collaboration of Grand Forks Public Library. Hope many of you in Grand Forks have utilized that service. It's been very popular. We've heard really good stories and response from the community. Not a lot of dollars there after paying for 40 radon detectors that we donated to the public library. So there were some sweat efforts, sweat equity going in there. I know Dr. Williamson helped out a little bit too, that we put together infographic a little bit in a little pouch with the test kit. I still do work closely with the public library to keep updated on the circulation data. Also, some efforts going in unpaid, but it does help our cause. And I'll get to the publicity side of things and relationship building side of CNT research, but it does not translate into monetary values, the external grants, or it does not even translate into the publications that we're looking for. But these are smaller pieces actually being very helpful to furthering our CNT research. That actually allowed us to replicate the same program with Fargo Public Library, which was supported by the inaugural UND Connect grant. Again, very small dollars. It was only 5,000, and we spent the majority of it purchasing those digital test kits. But then it gathered it garnered a lot of public support. It raised awareness of the issue, how significant it is to North Dakota, which was part of our goal. And then that led me to speak a little bit about UND Connect, my experiences at the university level, which helped again further our issues and increase the awareness. Again, these are the things are not really doesn't really have monetary values or publications or but other things, but it had a really significant impact on us. Even President Armacost briefly mentioned of our Fargo Public Library effort in a sense that how small the dollar values are, but then how big of an impact it is. And I'm not too familiar with this bill, but I know Dr. Schwartz has mainly worked closely with other external partners about SB 2020-04, about the Radon Disclosure Bill, which is a big success for us. One of the big goals this research group had in mind several years ago when we started this initiative, because policy change makes a big deal, and that helps improve the quality of or improve the lives of North Dakotans, which we had as a big objective as a researchers and employees of this institution. So I'm gonna share some of the lessons that I learned from these experiences, and then I have a few, and then I would be happy to take any questions afterwards. First 2 points that I put in this slide are basically the same thing. But it goes back to different roles that we play in different professional goals that we might have. And they are overwhelming. There are a lot. And then when you add the personal goals there too, it gets a little too much. I've learned through experiences that it's the best to align the professional goals with the institutional goals and priorities. Not only it will give you the internal resource opportunities, but also it helps build the relationships with the internal and external stakeholders, saves time, saves resources, and it will expedite the process of getting a car and getting your gas money. And when you do that, what I realized is that providing service to the state, and especially us in a public institution, the only medical school in the state, it makes sense providing service. And the overall goal of getting the grants, doing the CNT research is to provide service and serve the people in our state. So it kind of is the same thing, that always aligning our goals in our individual level, aligning the goals at the institutional level, and aligning goals within perhaps in a statewide goals too. And that has been helped me a lot with saving time and saving resources, furthering our cause. Oftentimes, and this was me in my early career years, and I see that often when we welcome new faculty, at least at UND, that we hire best of the best faculty, but sometimes they have different pieces of the car, but not is really put together. So I've gotten such a valuable advice from earlier in my career that helped me get to this external grant and then do the CNT research that I was hoping to do. But getting that used car, and it may look differently for every people, and it may be a little more better car than others, doesn't matter. But then building your own vehicle and the tool to start your journey is the first thing. That's what I learned the most. And collaboration, obviously, as we all know, it's a must. It's not an optional thing. But then collaboration is also a part of what I learned, is that it's a strategic thinking, that it's not about putting people together and making a group, but then strategically thinking always that what are we missing? What do we miss in our research group? How we can add more expertise to address those missing pieces in the puzzle. And that's an evolving thinking. It has to happen always. It's not a one and done type of a process. But then collaboration, I always approach it in kind of a puzzle mindset. What am I missing? And how can we bring that piece together from a new perspective or new person or different way of collaborating? So those were also important lessons that I learned. As a communication researcher and professor, it's something that we preach in our classrooms and all the time. But I assume that some of our colleagues in the medical school may not come more naturally than us, that it's any publicity is good publicity. We know that line, but then it doesn't really become a realistic thing. Sometimes we caught up in the day-to-day activities, and then getting the CNT research or whichever research that you do in a setting is usually the first priorities, and day-to-day activities, the things get checked on is an important thing. So we don't really think about how we can work with the communicators or communication person in your organizations, local journalists, to gather that publicity. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's a little controversial, but that's okay. Any publicist is good publicity, and I'll get back to that in the next slide. But it's good to have that mindset in our day-to-day activities. When we do research, we talk with the participants, we write papers, how we can get these words out. It doesn't have to always be an announcement of the big awards. Step-by-step process sometimes are very newsworthy items from a journalistic perspective. And then I hope that it becomes a part of a lot of our CNT researchers' routine as well as we go. Publications, before I understand this external grant process, how to work as a group, publications were the main goals for me. As a tenure track professor, I had this number of publications that I wanted to reach, what kind of impact factors that I needed to make it to. So those were my goals. But then I realized that if you are interested in doing CNT research and you need external dollars to do the CNT research, whether internal or external, uh, when we are interested in going into that route, publication becomes sometimes, not always, means to an end. Publication itself is not necessarily the goals, but then it helps further the cause and helps you move forward to get to the next gas station. So we've been very strategic about where to publish. It's not about how high the impact factors are. They are important, but also at the same time, does it make sense to publish in this particular journal, considering the next steps that we wanted to do? So publication also, in a grand scheme of things, is a piece of the puzzle and collaboration part as well, to continue to do the CNT research that we are hoping to do. Last thing of the lessons is that a lot of it is actually relationship building. And then we all know, but we get a little impatient with this, that relationship building does not happen over time. And it takes a lot of effort. And they don't necessarily translate into immediate monetary values or immediate benefits to us. But it's a capital, and it's an investment of our time every day. And that a grand scheme of things, again, kind of bigger picture mindset and more forward-looking perspective, that every relationship, internally, externally, will get you there and even faster or easier. So examples are even the relationship with, if you're a researcher, working with your budget people, your grants and contract officers, working with local partners, internal partners. For me, it was the library that started with the external partnerships, public health departments. Obviously, it was important for me in this particular initiatives. Kind of going back to the publicity calms people. Internally, local journalists, you don't have to have such a close relationship with them, but then just enough to get to let them know you and then what you do in your daily activities, what kind of impacts you're making in the local and state communities. Having that on their radar has always been helpful, and then it continues to build the relationship and continues to strengthen the relationship that you started. But it takes time, efforts. So it's a little more longer term investment. Last but not least, and it's sometimes it's out of our control, but I've benefited so much from so many different mentors that I met at UND, whether it's research related, whether it's a personal life, whether it's administration. They've made such a huge impact. And then what I have been really fortunate is that I was not shy about asking for help, and I was not shy about reaching out to the mentors that I wanted to have as my mentor team. And I probably can speak for any of us in the room that we are willing to help someone reaching out to us, collaborate, share wisdom. And I've had a good fortune of getting those positive responses. So if there are early career researchers new to the organization that you're currently working for, don't be shy reaching out to the people that you look up to, and they come in a place that you need the most. And then that's the same as the relationship building. It takes time. We don't get the trust right away, but then they are invaluable sources of your grants and of your CNT research, the goals that we have. So I talk too much. But those are the lessons that I feel like, and I'm sure there are more, but those are the immediate things that I learned from my CNT research. I've never had R21, R01 types of a big grants, but I've had a good fortune of having enough grants to continue with my CNT research that I've been doing. Pleased with, I am so pleased with the outcomes of the things that we did to raise awareness of the radon issue, change behaviors, even at the legislative level. So I think we were very successful in that regard. So the dollar amount may not always dictate whether it was a success or not, but I had a good fortune of working with wonderful people in the team, and I look forward to continuing on this journey. So there is really no set destination again. So with that, I put my name and email address. Please feel free to reach out if you wanted to talk more about it, and I would be happy to take any questions you might have.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Kim. Yeah, this time we can do questions. It's probably easiest if you have a question to put it in the chat, and then Kent or myself, we can reiterate that. I guess what people are thinking, I had a question that popped up. I know you're really interested in, and I think your current grant of trying to figure out how to increase like radon test kit usage, because you
Mhm.
can get people to order it, a free test kit, but it's hard to get people to actually use it, even though it is free. Do you have
Right.
any general ideas or hunches, hypotheses about how you can get people to increase test usage, or just in generally how get people to increase, a behavior that it might be free, but it's not sort of free with sort of time and effort.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the million-dollar question in this initiative. And then HUD grant is the first step for us to tackle. We had a lot of different ideas. And I also, again, I don't want to be too specific because it's an ongoing
Mhm.
trial, but it's a lot about psychology theories and behavioral economics, behavioral science, in that line of literatures, and very social scientific theories, a lot about the research on behavior change, so much. But then we all know that changing behaviors is so, so difficult. So we are exploring a few different avenues through the HUD grant, and then we're hoping to see some results and then continue with different hypotheses as we gather more ideas and data from the current ongoing trials.
Okay. Looking at the chat here. Um, First of all, great presentation, great analogy, and a use of the library. A question, your funding sources have been very diverse and to me from some unexpected sources. Can you speak to how you seek varied and diverse funding sources?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Well, being in not really affiliated with the medical school, there are different resources available in each different college, and the art and sciences that I was and I'm still involved, um, does not have pre-award support. We used to have it, but it's mostly related to budget-related pre-award support. And arts and sciences, for instance, have a contract with Hanover Research, external research company, to help identify funding sources. They help reviewing proposals, so different support. And I have also been not shy about utilizing those resources. So I have met with those Hanover Research consultants. It takes times because they serve a lot of people, different organizations as well. But I met with them multiple times, sharing my ideas, what would be a good funding sources that I could go after. They have been very valuable. And I do a lot of manual labor too, that I signed up for different grant alerts. I look at them whenever it comes in and just scanning through. It doesn't take more than 20 seconds a day. But then scanning through and something caught up, then I bring it to our collaborators. Maybe it's something worth that we can look
Hi,
for.
this is Stefan. I'm returning a call from you.
Um, so really there it has not been a magical person that give me the list of the funding sources that I could go after. But things that we identify through different resources or our manual labor has been successful. Prevent Cancer Foundation was actually an interesting thing that I was still in one of the MPH course. So that was before I got the degree from MPH. And it was Dean Warren's class was one of the final courses in my MPH program, and he had I had an assignment for us to find a funding agency to fulfill your professional goals or something along that line. So I was doing my homework, trying to find a cancer related or any prevention related, and I came across this Prevent Cancer Foundation grant. I brought it to our team. It seemed make sense to us. And then we applied and we got it. There was no indirect support, but it was okay because it's also a step in our journey. We don't have to have the millions of dollars right away with 41% indirect, but then it served our purpose at that time and has given us an opportunity to start building that relationship with this new foundation. That was a long answer.
Thank
We have
you.
another question. It reads, in your radon and technology work, what components do you consider translational and which are clinical, and how do you differentiate this in your work?
Great question. I think in my work, clinical and translational are, in most cases, most of my work are clinical and translational. The reason why is that we oftentimes, so far in our journey, we've been focusing more on people in North Dakota because we thought that they were at risk of being exposed to radon, high levels of indoor radon levels. They obviously come from different backgrounds, demographically or health status wise. But in our perspective, it makes sense that this is the group of people who are at risk of developing lung cancer because of this high radon levels. So in a sense, it's clinical in our approach. And then the tool that we developed or the car that we got, which is the app, and it has evolved throughout the years. It itself is an intervention tool, and it is a tool to educate the public or the population who are at risk of developing lung cancer because of radon exposure to understand what the research has been done. What are the health dangers of radon exposure? What do they need to know about? That's the tool, that's the translation itself. So a lot of the things that I do as a social scientist are translational because we want to communicate the scientific facts and research findings with the publics. So in essence, my work has always been clinical and translational.
Okay. There's a comment in the post here, but just as a note here, Kent put in a link to a short survey at the end of this. So if people could take a few moments to fill that out, that'd be great. With the comment here, I love listening to your journey. You provide great tidbits of insight, especially appreciating the emphasis on relationships being a key factor and hearing about how you got the job done with smaller, diverse funding. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions at this time? Well, I think then with that, we'll close out here. Thanks everyone for joining me, and our host and presenter. I think this was a great addition to the Transcend Didactic lecture series. Hope to see everyone next month for our third session. Thanks
Thank you
all.
for having me. Thank you.